Hello there, this is Akmal Makhdum and you're with the Fourth Apple. And today we have a very esteemed guest, Dr. Kate Lovett. She's former Dean of the Royal College of Psychiatrists of England. Actually, there's only one Royal College of Psychiatrists, so it's the world actually. She's a consultant psychiatrist in Plymouth. And today she's with us and we are going to have quite an interesting and possibly a candid discussion. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you ever so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. It's so good because although you were the former dean, but there's much more coming, isn't it? That you are also the lead for recruitment of the Royal College, and you're also one of the contenders for the presidency of the Royal College. So what we hope is that there is far more to come than there was in the past. My first question is, coming back to the candid aspect, is that what is the relevance of the Royal College of Psychiatrists for a Pakistani, overseas Pakistani, for an overseas graduate? So somebody who's not a member.
Yes.
So we'll come to the members as well,
Yeah.
but what's the relevance?
Well, I mean, the Royal College of Psychiatrists is a professional body and it exists to improve the lives of people with mental illness. And, you know, my relationship with the Royal College goes back to when I was a trainee and back in the day that was, you know, I sent my stamped addressed envelope to the college in Belgrave Square in London to sit the exams. And one of the important things I think the college does is set standards. So it sets standards in education, in training, by examination. It influences the curricula for training programs in the UK, but has a much broader educational remit. So that's providing continued professional development for psychiatrists, both in the UK, but it's important to remember that 20% of our members are international.
Indeed.
Throughout the world. But I think your challenge is absolutely right. It is a membership organisation and the college belongs to all of us. Many people pay a subscription and it's absolutely critical that it remains relevant to the lives of psychiatrists today. We need to move with the times and be responsive to our membership, make sure that we are meeting everybody's needs. The challenges facing the profession and society at the moment are huge. So I'm keen that we continue to modernise, that we continue to move with the times and that we remain relevant.
Okay. In my life with the college from, say, 90s onwards until recently, I saw one watershed moment when college really opened up. College opened up its gate to new ideas. It really opened up its gates, full stop. Even so much so that the college actually considered whether the college should be called the Royal College of Psychiatrists or the Royal College of Mental Health Professionals or something like that. So that was quite a revolutionary time. But as we've seen with all reformist movements, that there's always a backlash and there's always a desire to come to the center. Do you see that that is the case, or is the college still, post-reform as reformed as before?
I think it depends on your perspective. I have seen in my lifetime at the college things jump forward. And one of the things that I was determined when I became dean was to make it a less stuffy place. I think there's, I'll be blunt about it. My experience of the college, particularly in training and as a young consultant, was that it was a place that felt a little bit remote, a little bit aloof. And I didn't feel that I particularly belonged. I remember the very first international congress I went to. We didn't call it congress in those days. I think it was called the AGM. And I found myself, I had a young family at the time. I had a young son, and I travelled to Edinburgh with my young son and my parents to look after for sort of childcare. And I found myself in a queue of people to the cloakroom and felt like a fish out of water. I didn't feel that I belonged. It was, you know, if I'm candid, a queue of men in suits handing in their umbrellas and briefcases, and I felt like a fish out of water. And I think what I've done in my career, I mean, belonging is really important to me. It's been a value and a theme throughout my life, starting in childhood. I grew up in a very rich environment where, you know, that was a family value, was, you know, really trying your best to welcome and make people belong. So I think that's something that I took into my role when I was dean, determined to make a difference. And I think we've moved a bit. I think we've got probably a long way to go. And it's very easy to take your eye off the ball and not to notice people. So that's why we just need to keep engaging. And I'm very keen, you know, if I become president, that the values that I brought to being dean, I will continue. I'm keen to be somebody who is available and listening. One of the biggest traps, I think, for leaders is hubris, and you know, not listening to your constituency.
Indeed.
And you know, I'm kind of minded of, you know, what MPs do. They have surgeries with their constituents.
Sure.
One of the things I want to do, you know, as president, is make sure that I have time in my diary for people to come and see me.
To have the president's surgery.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. I will ask you 3 questions. And the first question is, as the former dean and, you know, your whatever role that you have a current role as well. About 30 years ago, when I was involved with the college, there were certain groups of ethnic minority candidates who had the lowest rate of passing the exams. And it seems that that is still the case.
Yes.
So I remember raising it 30 years ago and then 25 years ago in one of the academic committees. And I was quite, I don't know, surprised or unsurprised to see that the figures are still the same for the same group of ethnic minority doctors. What's the stricture? What's the problem?
Yeah. Well, it is a problem. I think that's the first thing to say. It absolutely is. And it's something that, you know, exercised me before I became dean. I was head of school for psychiatry in the southwest of England. And, you know, differential attainment has been recognised as a problem for a long time. I think it's a very complex issue. And the college commissioned an external review of its exam in 2015 to really drill deep to see whether there was bias in the exam, because that's the anxiety that you know, it could be an exam that is biased, that is putting people at disadvantage unfairly. And what the external review showed was that there wasn't inherent bias in the exam. It made a few recommendations for improvements, such as reducing the amount of material to read in some of the CASC stations. And that was important because if English isn't your first language, you know, reading speeds and so on. So it suggested some tweaks to the exam which would help improve people who are sitting its experience of it. But it didn't find an inherent bias. I took part in some research that the GMC commissioned with Kath Wolf, who's a senior lecturer, professor, and now a professor at UCL, into fairness in training, fair training pathways for all. And she did some very good qualitative research that looked with a lot of stakeholders at what some of the issues could be. And I think what she's shown is that there are structural biases within our training pathways and programs. and those are things that they're unconscious. People aren't deliberately making life difficult for anybody, but people who are international medical graduates that she interviewed reported things like less good relationships with their trainers.
Sure.
We have a ranking system for where you get sent for your rotations.
Sure.
So less well-performing candidates on one measure are more likely to end up in the least popular training rotations.
Sure.
And may not have as good supervision that they might do in the more popular. So the disadvantage can be sort of compounded through the systems. So what, and we haven't cracked it yet. We absolutely haven't. But when I was dean, we were very fortunate to have Subodavi, who was my associate dean for trainee support, and Subod helped me do a lot of work with our schools of psychiatry just to get this on people's agendas. So it's a standing agenda item now. There's a whole lot of things that we need to be doing in terms of coaching, mentoring, working with the diaspora organisations as well. And I think, my experience is that the diaspora organisations in the UK are doing a fantastic job in providing welcome, education, cultural roots, and philanthropic work as well. And we absolutely need to continue to foster those good relationships with the diaspora organisations and link our trainees in with them.
Sure. Okay.
Lots of our trainees don't even know they exist. So I'm forever sort of saying, I've got a Sri Lankan trainee at the moment and encouraging him to get involved with the Sri Lankan Society.
They can be quite a help.
Yeah.
The next question that I'd like to do is, although, from this discussion there could be some follow-up, but obviously we are constrained by time. The relationship of the college with the employers in the past was quite a powerful relationship. College actually accredited certain training positions. College actually determined that the trainee must have X, Y, and Z. The colleges have lost that. So why did the college agree to losing its influence? Why did it not fight? Why is it totally irrelevant as far as where people work?
Well, I mean, again, good question, and I, that was before my time, and I don't use that as an excuse. But things changed, didn't they? When modernising medical careers around that time in the mid 2000s, and health education England for training in England became the commissioning body for education. Now we still have influence through our regional advisor system. So regional advisors should be sitting on school boards and being part of quality panels that the schools are running throughout the England and the equivalents in the rest of the UK. And I think, although it felt like we had a lot of influence, I think it was probably a double-edged sword in the past, and it depends whose perspective you take. But certainly, I think some of the health boards and so on didn't find it a particularly helpful relationship, and felt that there was kind of a risk of nepotism, of Royal Colleges sort of influencing decisions in an unfair way. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that, but that is a viewpoint that I've heard articulated. And I think it's difficult to judge. We do have quality assurance mechanisms in training, very much so. And the people that are involved in those are psychiatrists, and those will be members of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. And deaneries do have the power to withdraw training posts and to put strict stipulations on what needs to change. So I just encourage psychiatrists to really get involved in all of these things.
But the dean that you're talking of is the dean of training, not under the Royal College.
That's right.
But the Education England, isn't it?
Yes, Health Education England. So there are.
So it's not really the direct Royal College influence?
No. But a dean, so there are, I think, 14 deaneries in England. Yeah. They all have a postgraduate dean who's responsible for all postgraduate training in medicine. Yeah. But within that, you'd have a school of psychiatry led by a head of school who will be a member of the college.
Yes.
And one of the things that we do at the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and I did when I was dean, is I chair a regular head of schools meeting. So the college is absolutely, has a very close relationship with the heads of school.
The last question that I want to ask is probably going to be an ongoing discussion, and that is the Royal College's current role vis-a-vis its members with the GMC. And with the GMC's recent legal declaration of it being potentially racist or actually racist, the overall impression that it is racist, overall statistics that suggest it is racist. So what is the Royal College doing about it substantively? What are the steps that Royal College, is the Royal College acknowledging that GMC is viewed as a racist organization? Has that been declared? Will it be declared? Will this be ever acknowledged? Because people have died. People have committed suicide. People have had heart attacks. So where is the college in all this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good question. And, racism is alive and well in UK society, structural racism. And, we need to do something, we absolutely need to fix this. We are, as you say, lives are being ruined, people have died, and one of the biggest wastes that I see in my clinical work and all the other things that I do is waste of talent. I think that is the biggest waste that I see in the NHS. And it's quite frankly scandalous. I feel very lucky that in my life, becoming dean was never part of my ambition.
Sure.
It was, a happy serendipity. I happened to, have done things that put me in a position where people said, would you stand? And I kind of listened to it with some reservation and put myself forward. But my opportunity when I became dean was to develop and to learn things and to do things that I never imagined were possible. And I felt, a real sense of self-actualization. And one of the heartbreaking things is when I look back at my younger self and I think unless I'd had that opportunity of through the college, I wouldn't have done any of those things. Sure. I would still be back in clinical world, in NHS organisations, which don't spot potential, which don't foster people's talents. And it makes me very, very sad.
Sure.
Because I see myself in so many people around me whose talents aren't being exploited and encouraged and so on.
Sure.
And when we add in racism to that equation, it's awful. It's absolutely heartbreaking. It's being vigilant about it. To be honest, I don't know what the college's relationship currently is with the GMC. But going forward, I think what we really need to be doing is to listening to our members and engaging in the debate and standing up and calling stuff out. That is important. And I think, I am somebody who throughout my life has stood up when I see injustice.
Sure.
Equity is a value that I hold close to my heart. And I've done many things in my career where I've put my head above the parapet. Life is frankly too short and I need to be able to sleep at night.
Indeed.
And so, as president, I will continue to bring that ability to, be courageous at times and to stand up and call things out.
Yeah, well, as president, you are kind of sort of untouchable, isn't it? Because I don't think the GMC will be able to touch you. Because many people, because as you know that when the recent legal decision came out that GMC was probably indulging in racist behavior, And many people in many diaspora organizations, we were discussing what reforms could be made. So, I made a list of about 16 or 17. So when these were circulated to the diaspora chairs, most of them were really scared.
Yes.
And most of them felt that, we are still in practice.
Yes.
And, anything could be found out
Yes.
against us or created against us, and we are not able to do that.
Yes.
Now, one suggestion that one has been thinking about and will propose, and now I'm proposing to yourself, is that what about the college taking on an independent role in discussing and evaluating each psychiatrist who's referred to the GMC on its own?
Yes.
Nothing to influence the decision,
Yes.
the process, or the judgment, but have a parallel view. Because if that is the main criterion of standard of clinical practice, standard of education,
Yes.
standard of excellence, and if the whole thing is underpinned by the college, then obviously it should also be if not the arbiter,
Yes.
but at least an influencer.
Yes.
So the member or the trainee of the college who's referred to the GMC goes to the GMC, is referred to the GMC, goes through that mill, but then also has the benefit of a review, of an opinion. It could be an internal opinion, it could be in discussion and consultation between peers, so then at least there is a degree of support.
Yes.
So if there is a formal role of the college like that, which is for every psychiatrist which is referred, and I'm not suggesting that should be the case with the physicians or the surgeons, but of course, the Royal College is, after all, a college of members.
Yes.
So what does it do for members?
Yes.
And what is the most crucial time except when your livelihood and your life or death could be impinging on it?
Yes.
So,
well, I think that's a very, very interesting idea. I think it's potentially very exciting. We have the psychiatric support service at the moment, but that's a drop in the ocean, isn't it? And so, I'd be very keen to, discuss that further, explore, actually, support for individuals from the college going through these horrendous things. And I think your point earlier on was really well made. I'm a courageous person, but in many respects, it's easy for me to be courageous.
Yes.
I'm at the end of my career in terms of, my mortgage isn't depending on my livelihood. My children have left home and all the rest of it. And I have, advantage and I don't fear the GMC in a way that many of my colleagues who are international medical graduates do. And the fear is palpable. I've had many discussions with colleagues, and I absolutely get the fear that they have in the workplace about speaking up.
Sure.
So I think, I need to use my voice to make sure that other people's voices can be heard and heard loudly. It's awful. I mean, the thought of anybody going to work feeling fearful.
Sure. Fearful of, having to commit suicide. That's not a very pleasant thing, is it?
No, and it's not pleasant, and it's immensely stressful.
Indeed.
Immensely stressful.
Well, Kate, it was a pleasure because we wanted to have this candid discussion, and thank you very much for your frank and honest opinion. And we look forward to further discussions, and most welcome you coming here and talking with us. So, viewers, we had Dr. Kate Lovett, who's currently head of international recruitment or recruitment in general. She's the national lead. And we had this discussion on the Fourth Apple. See you again. Thank you.